people, how you doing? I hope you're having a damn great day. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be discussing PSG's 4-2-4 formation in the game FC24. As per always, hit that like button, subscribe if you are new, and let's hop on straight into the goddamn video. So taking a look at the formation, it is a 4-2-4. I've made no structural changes to it whatsoever. So it is one goalkeeper, two centre backs, two fullbacks, two central midfielders, two strikers, and then of course two wingers. So taking a look at the tactics, right, the tactical vision that I think would best suit and reflect what PSG are all about, just like with the other sets of instructions that I have made for PSG, is wing play. I think wing play reflects how they set up to try and play, and more so, the core values of this team do not really change, even though the structural integrity of the team, changes and varies every now and then. As for the defensive style, I've set it to pressing after possession loss. Of course, you are playing a front four, so you want to try and, squeeze the life out of the opposition's backline or their goalkeeper, making sure it's very hard for them to find passing options in and around their defensive half. As for the team width, I've set it to 55. Of course, this does create a 1v1 man-v-man type situation in the backline, but I think it works quite well for PSG. So moving on to the depth now, I have set it to 85. Now this can help you in possession, of course, having that nice high line, maintaining the pressure on the opposition, trying to pin them back in their own half. And more so, if they are under pressure, they will look to try and hoof the ball up the field. And that's more or less where your centre-back pairing can look to try and win it and obviously claim it and recirculate it back into your team's possession. At the same time, you can sometimes be caught out with a through ball over the top or a quick counter-attacking fast break from the opposition. But of course, I think the cons are very much outweighed by the pros, and that is the possession style of football. Now moving on to the offense, the builder play I've gone with is a balanced approach. Now this will try and maintain the structural integrity of the formation at hand, of course, the 4-2-4, making sure that more so the players in and around when you have the ball, maintain their positions, whether it's the two central midfielders, the two wingers, or maybe even the two strikers. At the same time, you still want to have that ability to play quite quickly, transition quite effectively. Of course, when you are playing with the front four, you can have some crazy good counter-attacking opportunities, so you want to try and make the most of that. At the same time, you will be playing a possession-based brand of football, so therefore the slow build-up would also be quite integral to how you're setting out and trying to play. Again, you are playing a possession-based brand of football. Therefore, a lot of the players in and around the defensive half will look to try and support the builder play, try and show for the ball, pop up in those little half spaces, try and, get on the ball as much as possible, trying to facilitate for the attacking players further forward. Now, taking a look at the team width, of course, on the offensive side of things, I've set it to 60. Now, of course, you are playing a wing play approach, therefore you need to have a bit more width in your side. But at the same time, you are playing a front four, and they are quite widespread as it is. So you want to try and, bring them a little bit more closer to each other, have them interchanging positions, interlinking every now and then. You will still have the likes of Mbappe drifting into that left-hand channel, but at the same time, you want the likes of Dembele as well as Kang-in Lee, or whoever you have as your wingers, drifting in a bit more. And more so, I think 60 width does allow you to do this. As for the players in the box, I've set it to 8. Now again, you have 4 attacking players. You want to try and get as many of those players in and around the box. And if they're not in that box, you want more so your two central midfielders to make that adventurous run forward, breaking into the attacking third, and obviously trying to land on the end of those crosses or cutback opportunities. As for the corners and the free kicks, as per always, I've set it to 4. Now, taking a look at the instructions, starting off at the back with the likes of Donnarumma, he is set to come for crosses, and of course, saving outside of the box is set to balance. More of a traditional based goalkeeper. I have said this in the past, he doesn't really like to run off of his line, be caught in no man's land. So more so you would want him to be, stay on his line, make the saves, and make sure he is doing the goalkeeping duties. As for the saving on crosses, he is tall, he is physical, he can claim those balls. Now moving on into your backline, we've got the likes of Marquinhos and Skriniar. They are set to the same set of instructions, and that is the only change being made is the conservative interceptions. Now, essentially when you are playing such a light midfield, especially with the fact that you are playing 4 forwards, you can somewhat be exposed. So you would want and expect your two centre-backs to maintain their structural integrity to the backline and try and keep that shape and structure more times than not, making it very hard for the opposition to try and bypass them. So onto your fullbacks now. Both Hakimi and Hernandez have very differing roles of the two, I will say that. Hakimi is obviously the more adventurous, more attacking of the two fullbacks. So for his instructions, he is going to be instructed to join the attack, of course, bombing forward, normal interceptions, and then of course inverted. Now I did see that with this structure and this formation at hand, the right back would often drift into that more central areas, whether it was Hakimi or the likes of Carlos Soler. He was also, positioned as a right back, and then he would drift into the midfield. So you more or less want to try and replicate that role going forward. And then finally, for the defensive positioning, you want the fullbacks to both be able to step up and be a bit more aggressive and imposing towards the opposition player. As for the likes of Hernandez, he's got the base set of instructions, except for the fact that he is going to be told to step up on the defensive positioning. But then again, you want to more or less try and replicate a back three type system, because when Hakimi did bomb forward, the left back would naturally look to sit a bit deeper. So whether it was Mukiele or the likes of Hernandez, looking to just drift into that back three type system, but at the same time still allowing for the left back to be able to get forward in certain moments. So more so, I think the balanced approach for these three options allows you to do this. Moving on into your midfield, we've got the likes of Ugarte. He's set to stay back while attacking, a balanced approach for the crossing runs. So yes, like I said earlier, sometimes allowing for one of your central midfielders to be able to break into the box, attack the crosses, and maybe end up on the score sheet. For the interceptions, I've set it to aggressive. Now this is to try and more or less replicate Ugarte's mentality in the games. He's very aggressive, dives into tackles, has that nice flair and bite about him in the midfield, and you're more or less trying to replicate that. As for the defensive positioning, it's set to cover the wing. So if your fullbacks are out of position, or maybe your wingers have not, come back in time, you would expect and require your central midfielders to drift into those wider positions, picking up runners, trying to man mark players, and so on. As for the positioning freedom, on the offensive side of things, I've set it to free roam. Now, like I said earlier, with the possession-based style of football that you are trying to play, you need players to pop up in those little half spaces, show for the ball, provide a passing option to try and get the system flowing and moving forward. Onto the other midfielder now, Zahir Emery. He's set to also stay back while attacking, as well as get into the box. So even though they are going to be making those attacking runs forward, they are still going to be told, structurally, just make sure that you are in the midfield, make sure that you aren't susceptible to any exploitations from the opposition, but at the same time, if the opportunity does arise, make that forward run, get into the box, supply an extra body in and around that attacking third, which is more or less what they do tend to do. As for the interceptions for him, I've set him to normal, so more or less Ugarte will be the one that's chasing the ball, being very aggressive with trying to get it and win it back, whereas the likes of Zahir Emery, he's going to more or less be the structural, integral player to the system, making sure that he isn't stepping out of position too much. As for the positioning freedom, just like with the other side, it was set to cover the wing as well as free roam. Now into your forwards, we've got the likes of Dembele. He is set to having a basic defensive support. So sometimes dropping a bit deeper, helping out on the defensive side of things, or sometimes being an outlet ball, being a bit more of a counter-attacking type player, and more or less you are trying to replicate that. For the chance creation, I've set it to a balanced width. Now obviously with the inverted fullback on the right-hand side, Hakimi, the likes of Dembele will naturally be forced out wide, holding the touchline. But again, when he does drift inside and come a bit shorter, and then come a bit more with the likes of Kolo Muani and Mbappe, he is very, very effective. So you're trying to still replicate that role for him. For the support runs, now it's easier to say, tell the forwards to all get in behind, but you are playing a possession-based brand of football. Therefore, you would expect your forwards to show for the ball, drop a bit deeper, get on the ball a bit more, maybe drive at the opposition players. So therefore, you don't always want them making those dashing runs in behind. As for the interceptions, I've set it to aggressive, and then finally for the supports on crosses, I've set it to balanced, allowing him to be able to break into the box or potentially hang on the edge of the area. As for the likes of Bacalo, or it could be Kangan Lee, he is set to come back on defense, often dropping a bit deeper, helping support the fullback in that situation. The chance creation I've set though is set to a balance width, so I've noticed with Kangan Lee or the likes of Bricalo, they do tend to drift a bit more centrally, opening up a bit more space for Mbappe to drift into that wider left channel. So again, you are trying to replicate this role, and I think a balanced approach does suit it. Just like with Dembele, you want him to be on a balanced support for the support runs, allowing him to sometimes break in behind or potentially come a bit shorter, link up with the midfield or the other attacking players. As for the interceptions, it's set to aggressive, and then finally you want the left-hand side to be able to break into the box, and this more or less tries to replicate that role of Mbappe as well as the left winger, interchanging positions every now and then. So you'll allow the likes of Kangan Lee or Bacalo to swap positions every now and then with the likes of Mbappe. Onto yours two strikers now, we've got the likes of Kolo Muani and Kylian Mbappe. They have very similar roles. I would just say that the likes of Kolo Muani has a more defensive set of duties that he has to fulfill. So both of them will be set to the balance width as well as the mixed attack, still allowing for them to show for the ball, make those, wider channel runs or potentially stay a bit more central, but at the same time allowing for them to maybe be able to break in behind or potentially drop a bit deeper and play as a false nine. As for the likes of Kolo Muani's interceptions, I've set it to aggressive, allowing for that quick counter press to be implemented every now and then. And then finally, for his defensive support, you want him to drop a bit deeper and have a bit more of a defensive work rate to him. So, onto the superstar of the team, Kylian Mbappe. He is set to a balance width, so like I said earlier, allowing for him to drift into that wider left channel. That's what you would expect, that's what you would require. But if he wants to stay a bit more central and be a bit more of an attacking threat to the opposition, he can do so. You want to allow him to have a very fluid type role. And the best way I could replicate that fluid type role was playing him as a false nine, allowing him to drop off the backline, allowing him to sometimes drop a bit deeper, get on the ball, drive at the opposition, and also doing so in that wider left channel every now and then. So I think that's the best way to try and replicate that very fluid type role, because essentially if you watch PSG just with whenever, doesn't matter really what formation they play, Mbappe has a very fluid role where he can drift across the front line or maybe into the midfield and allow himself to express himself and get the best out of him. As for the interceptions, I've gone with a conservative approach. You don't really want him exerting himself on the defensive side of things. You want him very fresh for the attacking outlet. And essentially, he will be the attacking outlet because on the defensive support, he will be told to stay forward. Again, offering himself more so for the counter-attacking opportunities. So there you have it, people. That is how I would replicate Luis Enrique's 4-2-4 system. If you have enjoyed this video, as always, please hit that like button. Out of 10, I would give this a 5. I don't like the system whatsoever. I actually hate it. It's supposed to be a possession-based system, but it's very hard to gain possession and retain possession in a midfield that's so exposed at times. There's no natural DM or natural DM position with this midfield. So that's why I would give it a 5. Probably the lowest rating on the channel to date. But again, I think against league earned sides, the lesser sides, if you are looking to score a load of goals, it can be very effective. So on that aspect of things, yes, it could be very good. But again, you can be hyper exposed when using this formation. So be aware and wary of who you're using this formation against. Anyway, guys, I hope you have enjoyed it. If you have, please hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. And of course, as always, I hope you have a damn great day. I'll see you tomorrow.